This is the book review for Scaling Your Digital Marketing Team, Chapter 4. In this chapter, we're going to talk about key roles in the digital marketing teams. Tell us a little bit more about the key roles, James.
Yeah, so it's a big one that's in chapter number 4 because obviously there's a lot of different roles depending how large the team becomes. But I'll kickstart one of the first ones with being a PPC specialist. So making certain that someone within the team is a specialist at running paid ads, specifically whether it's Bing or whether it's Google AdWords, but making certain you've got that specialist in there. That they might have other kind of employees or virtual assistants underneath them, but having a PPC expert is very important. So within the key roles, what else do you have, Mads, within the team of what you would have?
Yeah, again, it obviously depends a little bit based on the business, right? But one of the key things for me as well is very much around email marketing. So I see a lot of people who focus on bring in, for example, from PPC, bring in the first sale, but they don't actually have good funnels for doing upselling and more selling and downselling and all this sort of stuff. So I think one of the critical roles in many businesses at least is around email marketing and really the whole funnel system around your offers or offers. And I think that's one of the roles that many companies overlook. Like a lot of companies look at SEO, they look at PPC, but they often don't have a solid system. And when it comes to ads in particular, what you can afford to pay is not based on what people pay you initially. It's based on your entire customer lifetime value. And therefore, doing upselling, doing more selling, and staying in touch with people who have bought from you in the past is critically important for me for business success.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, expanding on that slightly with regards to the next key role is a content creator or copywriter. So the copywriting of the emails is very important, split testing the subject line and stuff like that. But also the copywriter could be running the copy for the ads as well for the PPC specialist. So you'll see that they all kind of intertwine with each other and all need to work alongside each other. The copywriter and content creator could need to now be learning artificial intelligence for scaling, supporting blog articles, being able to do a proper outline of what is needed. And I think content creation is becoming more and more important myself, like you said, to increase the lifetime value within emails, but also having blogs on there, understanding and providing and scaling out holistically, having it. So I think a content team and specifically having a content manager is a key role as part of the business. What else do you have then on the list, Mads?
Yeah, I also think generally when you're looking at marketing nowadays, marketing automation, and it ties in a lot to what I was saying about email, but I think like building the whole holistic system around marketing is key, and it's one of those roles that, again, it's often not being looked at. People often tend to have people in isolation, so they might have an SEO, they might have a PPC person, they might have a social media manager, but really having someone holistically look at the whole system, I find very important, particularly when you start scaling and becoming a bigger business, right? Like you can get a lot of benefit from the synergies between channels and just cross channel in general by making sure that you have someone who is very focused on the marketing automation at a high level.
Yeah, for sure. I think the next one for me would be a social media manager. So making certain that they are sharing on Twitter most days, on LinkedIn most days, on Instagram, in Facebook groups, and just being omni-channel and omnipresent. So with AI now, it becomes a little bit easier to be able to manage all the different platforms, but having that social media manager and doing good quality posts that hopefully can drive traffic through to your website, I think is another big part as a key role in a digital marketing team.
Yep. I think the next one is probably a web developer. So I've been in business for many years, and I think I've always had a web developer, at least one, because you might not have space for a full-time web developer, but I've always found it so valuable to have someone in-house, like when there's something that breaks or when there's something you're really eager to update or whatever, like having someone in your team that can do it is extremely valuable for my side. So it's definitely in my marketing teams. We've always had a web developer.
Yeah, for sure. I think the next one for me would be a graphic designer. And what's been pretty crazy, and people probably laugh at this, but for many years, I used to think that the web developer and website designer was the same role, and it's actually not at all. So the graphic designer that's also the web designer, they kind of use Figma, and I can then go back and forth with what I like and what I don't like. And then once I've got the design, they can then pass it on to the developer to create it. But also nowadays, I need in-house graphic designers for creating good quality social media posts that's engaging and can catch the attention. And for like things like thumbnails, and I think thumbnails is very important on like YouTube and stuff like that. So I think a graphic designer is another key role within a digital marketing team.
Yep. And I think UX and UI ties into that a lot, right? Sometimes in one of my companies, we have a UX designer that's also doing a lot of graphics, but um, working with a couple of different SaaS tools, for example, like we see consistently how important UX and UI is. And I definitely used to underestimate the value of it. I think like most SEOs, when I first came into this space, like my focus was how do we get traffic, how do we try and convert people, but really the user experience is so important. So again, when you have a growing team, it's not the first role to hire in most cases, right? And sometimes it might even be someone you have coming in on occasion to go through your site and try and optimize it. But UX in general for me can definitely be very important, and I'd say particularly if you're building tools. I see so many SaaS tools that just don't succeed because they're really, really not a user experience that's worth having for many users, right? And that's difficult. And the challenge is what you mentioned earlier is developers and graphic designers is not the same thing. And it's the same thing. Developers and user experience is often not the same person at all. And therefore, it's important to have the input of both. Right.
Yeah, when they've got the data and they're using conversion rate optimization tools like Hotjar, or there's many others that they can be using. Like again, I used to just think that was the web developer's role, and it's not. Like it's like you've got to be making sure, because that is progressive optimization as well. Like progressively, in a year's time, you might realize that a green button converts better than an orange button, and that certain text around the buttons can work better as well. So conversion rate optimization is huge for sure. Like you can get the same amount of traffic, but like you was talking about lifetime value, the traffic value of what you're getting could be so much higher. But the next one for me would be a technical SEO. So making certain technically your site is loading fast, the core web vitals is good, that you're running Screaming Frog or Sitebulb or PageCrawl or Jet Octopus kind of reports every single week, fixing the 404 and the 304 for the 301 errors and stuff like that. So yeah, just making certain that all the errors are done and having a technical SEO in-house as well, I think is a key role in a digital marketing team.
Yeah. And one of the roles that I really love, we've scaled it for most of our companies. We have at least one person in this role, and that is an outreach specialist. So this can be for influencers. It could also be for other things. But in general, we have found that you can often find, particularly in the early days of a company, you can find relatively low cost people who can learn how to do really, really good outreach, right? So we often do it for many reasons. So we often do outreach to find influencers. So outreach to find other people who can talk about your brand. We do a lot of outreach to get on podcasts, for example. And a lot of people ask me, why are you doing so many podcasts? And I'm like, when I show up and spend 30 minutes, the link alone is worth it. So we also often get business out of it, but we do a ton of podcasts just for the links alone, because very often you get links your competitors don't have. You get real traffic and so on. So that's very valuable. And obviously from an SEO standpoint, link building and so on in general. So this is sort of outreach specialist for me is one of those roles that a lot of companies can afford and can benefit from hire relatively early on.
Yeah, for sure. I think another huge one is data analyst. I'll let you finish on like the project managers type role and stuff like that. But a data analyst is important for so many reasons. For knowing your numbers, like you was talking about your lifetime value, but also increasing your average transactional value, which kind of goes in line with conversion rate optimization. How can people add more to their cart? But also with regards to email campaigns, can you segment your audiences? And when you segment it, does that make it a little bit higher open rate or better conversions and stuff like that? Data analysts could be even from a TF-IDF kind of old school way of getting the right entities on a page and stuff like that, and content optimization. So the data analyst kind of works with multiple departments. Can they split test the thumbnails as well and stuff like that? So there's so many different ways and different reasons why a data analyst is key as you're starting to grow your business.
Yep. And lastly, as you mentioned, project manager. So again, depending on the company and the setup, right? Project managers can manage various things. In some lines of business, it's a product. In some lines of business, it's a service. And some lines of business, it's maybe an individual project. So a project could be, we're not doing PPC right now, let's implement it, or the like, right? So project managers can have varying roles, but it's very often needed in a business, particularly with a bigger marketing team, to have an individual who is responsible for tying together many of these things. So for example, if you're launching a new product, that will often influence many of the roles we have talked about. And having someone pooling together all the information and all the things that are required from these different individuals can be very, very valuable, and can often make things move forward significantly faster when you have important projects happening. Sometimes it might even be for client management, right? So if you're running an agency, and project managers can be very valuable from making sure that each client is getting the value they deserve.
Yeah, for sure. So anyone who's watching this, we hope you like our book review of Scaling Your Digital Marketing Team, chapter number 4.